Hi everyone, my name is Kayla. I have a Bachelor of Health Science naturopathy, and I'm a naturopath at Kayla the Nurturing Naturopath. Welcome to my podcast Awareness. They have Megan who'll be joining me today. She's a global education advocate and co-founder of Missing School, which is a charity she launched after her son missed 2 years of school due to critical illness. Since then, she led groundbreaking work helping kids with complex health stay connected to school, including World First Tech Solutions, a Churchill Policy and Deakin Honorary Fellow, and 2025 ACT Australian of the Year. Her journey has taken her from heartbreak to hope. Hi, Megan. How are you today?
Great, Kayla. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Could you please tell us what is Missing School?
Missing School is a national not-for-profit organisation dedicated to keeping children with chronic physical or mental conditions connected to their school community. We provide tools, a helpline, and technology, especially telepresence technology, so students can attend class from wherever they are and access their curriculum, connection to peers, keep the relationships with their teachers and their learning, and have that important social engagement that is so much a part of school. So we've been around since 2012, and we started in a Canberra lounge room. It was set up by three mums. I was one of them. I am one of them. And this brings us to today.
Oh, amazing. And across Australia, how many children are affected by chronic physical or mental illness?
So that data is not collected very well in Australia at all. So we've had to extrapolate to try and work out that. We know that the research says, in fact, by Australian researchers, that up to 30% of children have at least one chronic condition. Of course, some children and young people have multiple chronic conditions and other, um, different factors that are affecting them. So, taking the Australian student population, a school student population, we say that around 30% or approximately 1.2 million children experience chronic conditions at school. Mm.
Wow. And what is your vision?
Yeah, so our vision is a world where every child who can't make a physical connection, who can't be physically connected to their classroom can um, be digitally connected so that they have a continuing education and that continuing social connection with their peers, their teachers, indeed their school community, and that can take place from wherever they are, whenever they can. So we want to see that as business as usual in our schools, so happening every day in Australian schools and hopefully globally as well.
Amazing. And what is your mission?
Our mission is essentially to solve school isolation for children who experience a physical barrier to attending school. And that's primarily been children with chronic medical or mental health conditions. But I can see us extending that to cover um, more children, especially since we're now in Australia and globally at the centre, our schools are at the centre of a school attendance crisis, where, for example, in Australia, 40% of children are not attending school for 10% or more of the time. And just to get a perspective of what 10% is across a school life, that's more than 1 year missed.
Well,
And we know that there's no safe threshold for absence. This comes from the research, and that anything more than 10% of school missed, and indeed many children experience much more than that, is problematic for a student's academic well-being, but also for their, connection and engagement with their school community and their peers and teachers, and can have really long-lasting effects as well as being problematic today. So,
yeah, so true. Yeah, because like you said, it's obviously the education, but it's that connection to the other students in the community, and yeah,
mm,
it's
yeah,
all
it's
effective.
about having about these kids being able to maintain their identity as students as well, not patients, not kids who are sick,
Yeah.
not kids with a problem or a mental health issue, but actually that a most virtuous thing, which is to be a kid, to be seen
Yeah.
and known as a kid, and to be and experience yourself as a kid.
That's
And
right.
also, secondly, to have, perhaps the most virtuous label, which is student. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of what we're trying to achieve here and do here has to do with how a young person sees themselves and their belonging and their
Yeah.
place in the world, and that they can identify as kids and students and learners. I think that's really a key to it all. And I say this, and I'll say it now in case I forget it, in one of our other questions, but
Yeah.
we're, I like to say that we're not just here to help these kids with help in inverted commas. It's about enabling these kids and young people to bring their contribution of who they
Yeah.
are and their gifts, skills, and talents to the classroom from wherever they are.
Yeah.
So well, maybe we're helping ourselves, because why miss out on the brilliance that these kids can bring to their communities? I really um, make a point of saying this now.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's really important. And what is your impact?
So, one of the things that we've done in providing, or firstly, in putting this on the map, the agenda in Australia through Australian first reports, Australian first policy papers on the issue, and a world first when it started telepresence robot service to prove that two-way digital connection is completely possible from hospital or home. We
Oh,
have been able to collect over 1,500 surveys and interviews from parents and teachers around Australia. And that's enabled us to code close to 7,000 data points on school isolation, on what it means to reconnect a student to school, to their community, what it means for the student, what it means for the family, importantly, what it means for peers and teachers too. So it's been wonderful to be able to actually take what we hear, that we pass through our own lived experience of what we're hearing and actually codify that into some really important key points. And
mm,
those key points are that, one, what the research says about school isolation is absolutely correct in terms of what the data says for our, student cohort that we engage or support. And that is that they fall behind academically. Their relationships with their peers and their teachers become problematic, that they experience huge amounts of anxiety, and their physical condition or mental condition is accompanied by one or the other. So, in other words, medical or physical condition and mental health sit hand in glove, they go
yeah,
together. And so does well-being sits right wrapped around those. And that this can really affect so many things in a student's and a young person's life, as well as all the other things that they might be experiencing at the same time, whether it's their gender identity, their where they live in Australia, um, intersectional issues to do with socioeconomic situation, their cultural background, their indigeneity. It's this, we really want to make the point that these kids are whole people.
yeah,
They're a Venn diagram of beautiful complexity. And so, that's our data shows all of this. When we can reconnect them to the classroom, the impact is quite phenomenal. And one of the overwhelming data points is that social connection is really good. I mean, go figure. I think everyone learned that in the pandemic, that
yeah,
this is such an essential part of being human. So what we can't know right now is whether that connection to the classroom improves their academic outcomes or not, because that's a much bigger, longer study. But the first thing that we are doing is giving them presence. They are present in the classroom. So there can be no academic progress without presence, and and then without inclusion, and then without participation. So we know that their attendance does increase, which means their opportunity to progress academically is underpinned by that. And then we know that we unlock school capacity to support them. So that's the other thing that happens when they come back to the classroom. So all the things that happen in the school can now be there for them, whether it's their, their subjects that they're doing at school, or even an assembly, or even group work with friends, or moments of play.
Yes.
And even things like graduations have been enabled by
Mm,
the representation, the physical representation via a technology device. So that's the impact. We've reconnected over 7,500 classmates through this technology, and trained hundreds of teachers as well, and really had some impact on policy in Australia in terms of the use of the technology, but also in having this student cohort recognised as children who experience an equity deficit through their circumstances and need provisions to enable an equal playing field for them to achieve their potential. We've collected lots of other data, which I won't go into, but that that's really there's some very beautiful stories, of course, that come along. We can talk about the numbers, but it's when you hear the stories of reconnection and what it's meant for the student and the family and the school. It really shines, it shines that a light on that data from a human perspective, and showcases the the wonderful humanity of it.
beautiful. And could you please tell us about your technology?
Yeah, so what we have been placing, as I mentioned, is telepresence robots. And these are devices that are, imagine, a screen on a stem and a base with wheels. So a Segway with an iPad on top, maybe might for people who want to envision that. And that telepresence robot stands in the classroom for the student who can't be there physically, enables them to dial in with a click, to be seen and heard, to see and hear and participate. Critically, they're able to move the robot around the classroom from wherever they are, which is super cool. Unlike our, Zoom call or a Teams call, you can see a wide sort of view of the room, the classroom, as a student who's not there. And you can turn the robot to look, you can look up and down, and you can move forward and around the classroom. So it's not our technology, it's technology that comes from Silicon Valley in the US. And we've used that technology to demonstrate that any school technology could be used for this purpose today, as it was in the pandemic when we had a public health crisis. A personal health crisis for a student could be um, used to connect them to the classroom when they're isolated. That's absolutely possible today. So that's what we're really working for now.
Oh, that's so cool. And how can schools help?
Schools do help. Schools are the centre of this story, really. And we've had the pleasure of working with amazing schools and staff of schools and teachers who, even if they were reluctant to start with, and remember that it was back in late 2017 when we started this, 2018, before Zoom or Teams were even used as extensively as they are today for work from anywhere. And schools who do adopt the technology and work out that, hey, this is just really easy to do, they do things that we can't even imagine. You know, we've had awesome stories of teachers like mapping out telepresence tracks in the classroom with tape. Students, as I said, participating in the year 12 formal via the robot and dancing on the dance floor to be there with their friends and peers. And, you know, that important moment, that rite of passage as well. And just really the everyday things about teachers observing that, hey, you know, what's important in this moment is some group work for this student who really just needs to belong and connect to their peers. And so why don't we do that? So it's just true that schools are the center of this story for the student. That's where they want to be. And we do also try and keep that desire there as well, so that they don't develop this reluctance to go to school and disengage because of their anxiety in returning. So it's a really lovely moment and never gets old to watch that reconnection of a student who's had this extensive isolation and obviously very difficult personal journey from a health perspective to actually dial in and to watch their friends and the welcome. It's such a human moment. And it's in that moment that you really see the technology disappear, if you like.
Yeah.
It's just people engaging. So
Oh, beautiful.
that's really, you know, and when schools can provide this for these students, it is life-changing. It's a
Mhm.
lifeline. So that is never to be underestimated. And we've really learned so much from the amazing schools and teachers who we've worked with.
Oh, amazing. And how can parents and carers help?
So parents and carers are, and it's typically mothers who are out there trying to get these solutions for their children. And the kind of the message for schools when a doctor's certificate turns up to say that child is allowed to be away from school, schools stop support because that's the model, right?
Yeah.
You've developed a sniffle, or you've got the chicken pox, or you've sprained your ankle, and here's your pass, your leave pass from school. It's a
Yeah.
medical certificate, and the school then says, well, that student's not able to do school and are they allowed to be away, so we just continue on. Well, that's really not effective when a child has a chronic health condition or a critical one like cancer or
Yeah.
cystic fibrosis or um, many of the other conditions, anxiety, where not providing support
Yeah.
is detrimental to that student because of the length of time. So it's predominantly parents that are there trying to set up this kind of support. And the message to parents and carers is that there's no better advocate for your child than a loving parent.
Yeah.
Um, a, a loving parent will persist and keep trying to make that child's life better. And I have to say that um, at the same time, I need to acknowledge how hard it is for parents to try and do this in the circumstances that they're in a chronic health or mental health condition for their child or more than one child. So it can be very, very hard for parents to navigate this where the school system as a whole doesn't have that response ready. And that is truly the case in Australia at the moment. And that is something that we're trying to change as well. So coming back to me saying we want to see this as business as usual, that's what we mean. That a parent with a child in these circumstances could come to the school and there's a set of nationally consistent plans and approaches that are rolled out that don't need to be fought for. And, you know, that can happen for every child who needs it every day, everywhere. So, yeah,
Good.
cheers to parents out there. It's
Yes.
really is an amazing job that you're doing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And how can the community help?
Look, the community is just so important in all of this because when we talk about school, we're also talking about the school community. So for school age children, we have all of those families connected to schools all across Australia. Hopefully they are. And so that's the first community that really is important here. And as far as what, how that community can help is by wanting these sorts of things in the school, this two-way digital connection. And we know across the schools we've worked with, parents of peers have absolutely been aware that that's happening. And so they're very happy for that to happen too. And so that's amazing. And then the broader community, as well as, first of all, supporters, fundraisers, or people who make donations, people who just cheer, people who go to their MPs and say that, they want to see this happen for kids across Australia. And of course, our community of amazing partners who we have every day who offer that pro bono support to us, which quite frankly is unable to be quantified. It's so extensive because how do you quantify moral support? Often, and this is the message to people out there, when we're doing this kind of work, it's not easy. It can be really challenging to keep going when you feel like you're not making headway or you're not where you want to be as an
Yeah.
organization. You haven't done enough for kids. That moral support from the community and from your partners and from people saying, we believe in you, we believe in what you're doing, we're backing you, we're here, invaluable. Never can put a dollar value on that because it's the reason we keep going, quite frankly. So, um, hosting events or buying merchandise, all of these things are important. But by far and all, it's the belief in us and the belief in what we're doing that carries the greatest contribution.
Amazing. And how can people donate and where can people go to donate?
So, if people are willing and able to donate, we certainly welcome that. And you can head over to Missing School, that's MISSINGSCHOOL, missingschool.org.au/donations. So right there, there's an online form, and we also can provide bank details if people would prefer not to use a credit card. We can accommodate all of those options. And we make every dollar count. So we get to unlock huge capacity because of the partnerships that we have with schools, with families, and with the broader partnerships that help us to, for example, mobilize, um, and reach and have social campaigns reach millions and millions of Australians around the country. So, yeah.
Amazing. Beautiful. And is there anything you want to recap or talk about that you feel like we haven't?
I think we've covered everything there. Just really want to bring people back to who this is for. The kids who we support are really doing it tough.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to convey just what that looks like in a child's or a young person's life. Uh, some of the children we support, many of the children we support have lifelong conditions. And when I say lifeline, being connected to their community, their school community is a lifeline. I'm not understating that. These kids fight really hard, and we need to make sure that they have a life worth living. And that means that they can remain socially connected, have their learning, be able to try to reach their potential and be valued for who they are. So we always come back to them. It's all about them. So that would be my last word. Yeah, they're
And
fighters.
yeah, they sound like they're going through a lot, and I sort of think, that it would sort of be, very isolating. So it's amazing that, that you exist, missing school, exists because, like you said, it's about the education, but it's also about the connection as well.
Yeah, it's the connection, and that connection embraces all of the things. It's social,
Yeah,
it's academic, it's learning, it's to community, and if anybody wants to sort of summarize this, it's like remember the pandemic and how that felt, and imagine if that was your everyday and that never ended for you. And we can do something about that
yeah,
as an organization, but we can do something about that as a country so that Missing School, the organization, wouldn't need to exist anymore because it's just happening like wearing a seatbelt or riding a bike with a bike helmet. Um, just how we do things now.
yeah, true. And for further information, should people go to your website and your Facebook page?
Yeah, definitely head to our website. We have a lot of resources there. We also have our 1300 number is on the website, which will enable you to come through to our helpline if you need to ask questions or find a service or get pointed to some resources. We have lots of good stuff that we can connect people to. So yeah, our website is always the best way to reach us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and making us more aware about missing school. I really appreciate it.
It's my absolute pleasure. As you can tell, I could talk about this forever. So
It's
it's always a beautiful opportunity for me to speak to somebody else who cares about it and to reach your audience as well. So thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Take care, everyone. Thank you for listening, and bye bye.